This story is about the original family called the ninjas, who have badass ninjutsus that even Naruto would be envious of. Their country is held at the throat by greedy politicians and dirty company owners who jump the bones of hot secretaries after leaving Coldplay concerts. This is the most deadly family in the country, but the greedy politicians have a secret weapon, which is using one of them against them. This is the story of their brotherhood, losses, and their victory against evil. This story begins in a place called the Nuevo Cielo Church, where a great explosion happens. Our MC, a ninja named Paco, realizes all his family members have been killed by some soldiers, and he swears that he's never going to forgive them. Bro soon switches into some Naruto hand seals and does a fire jutsu that make an Uchiha jealous, using a move called the Blazing Flame Dance. He lights the whole place up, and the RoboCop soldier in front of him targets him with his bionic eye. Our Tony Stark lookalike cop has had enough of his crap, so he blasts him before he finishes his fire dance and further destroys the building. The robot detects no reaction and scoots off like he got a memo that his shift is over, but Paco pops out with his twin swords covered with scorching fire. He blasts the robot and successfully breaks its exterior, then he goes ahead and slices off its head. However, he's shocked to realize it was actually a robot and not a person, which is unable to quell the fire of his vengeance. In deep pain, he screams while holding the head until it self-destructs in his hand and further sets the whole place on fire. In a flashback to a few years ago, Paco lies down on some flowers and enjoys how nice it is to be free. He's part of the Righteous Thief Brigade group called Ninja. Suddenly, a guy named L, his big brother and Righteous Thief Brigade group leader, comes to tell him it's time. L has a face card that definitely make the other Righteous Thief Brigade babes go crazy. L notices Paco likes this place, so he adds that this place was Big Sister Fana's favorite spot. Out of nowhere, a bird lands on L's shoulder, and both brothers head out to liberate their country, Huateca. Sometime later, at the Huateca Federal Police Headquarters building, the Huateca Federal Police Commissioner, Roberta, is glad that the congressional approval just went through. This is good because they can now conduct their cleanup operation with complete authority, and because they'll get support from a corporate conglomerate called the York Nazaya. She adds that the Party of the Sun, their major opposition, opposed the proposal, but their ruling party, called the Freedom Party, won because they were backed by York Nazaya. She asks the Huateca Federal Police Superintendent standing with her, Sean, if he doesn't think it's funny that the cleanup of their country was decided through the most democratic means. Sean replies that their country is filthy, filled with corrupt politicians, with the mafia controlling politicians with dirty money, and the radical armed group called Ninja, who keeps claiming to be righteous thief brigades, even though they repeatedly attack York Nazia-affiliated companies under the guise of reform. Sean believes this is why they need to clean up everything properly, but Roberta reminds him it's his role to play. Sean brings up a plan they once discussed, the Dem plans, and Roberta reminds him they need to first show results so they'll be able to convince Congress. Meanwhile, members of the ninja group move around in the night. Paco asks his brother where today's target is, so he's told it's a place called Azteca Foods. Another group member named Marco tells Paco that Azteca Foods is one of the York Nazia trinity that controls the country's economy. A group member named Anna jokes that this info is too complicated for Paco, but Paco tells her to shut up because he just wants to be useful to his big brother. Paco admits he doesn't understand complicated stuff like changing the country, but he believes it's enough if that's what his big brother is aiming for. He also hopes they'd be able to find and rescue their big sister Fana. Behind them, another group member named Caldo explains that Ninja was born to drive out York Nazia, which is feeding off the country, to liberate the country and achieve true independence. All that sounds like big ideals, but Paco's only interested in his big brother eventually becoming the country's leader. They soon get to their destination, but Elle tells Paco that he's not cut out to be the country's leader. From the top of a building, they watch as Superintendent Sean and some police members guard the entrance of Azteca Foods. Regardless, Elle prepares the group and they launch into action. Shortly after, their operation is successful and they detonate explosions around the entire place. While they're escaping, Anna smacks Paco in the back of his head for messing up the explosion again, but he reminds her that he can't help it since he just learned the method. Marco is just happy that Paco didn't accidentally kill them, but he's glad that the front companies of the mafia group called Meteoro will be shut down. Apparently, Azteca Foods has been collecting poppy seeds all over the country under the guise of trading grains, and Meteoro's companies also made huge profits by smuggling them to York Nazia. Those profits are then funneled as donations to the greedy politicians of both countries who run them from the shadows. Elle agrees that not a single coin makes it to the people from these trades, and they built the system to exploit them. Paco excitedly proposes that they only need to wipe out every York Nazian-backed company and the mafia, as if he's referring to a small team on Codem. Elle agrees and rubs his head, but Anna laments that Paco has zero knowledge of how the world actually works. When they hear a noise, they rush to put on their masks, and they're soon surrounded by the police. The team realizes the police were hiding out nearby to ambush them, and they're soon faced by Superintendent Sean, who orders the officers to capture the terrorists. Suddenly, the place is filled up with smoke and a mighty explosion knocks back the police officers and Officer Sean. Sean wonders what on earth is going on, but it turns out it's the biggest mafia group in Huchueca, Mitiro, who's paying them a visit. The mafia gang soon opens fire on them, and Paco wonders how they got there so soon. Annoyed, Sean asks his men to wipe out the scum gang, and the gang are determined to kill the cops and ninjas. Cornered between the police and the mafia, L leads his team to jump out of their midst so they can face each other. However, because there are so many police officers, they have to fight through the wall of police officers, stopping them from moving forward. With police officers dropping left and right like flies, Sean wishes the Dem plan got approved so they could take out these ninjas and mafia scum easily. Meanwhile, L starts doing some badass jutsu, so the others move into action to stop anyone from getting close to him while he cooks. After L completes the hand seal, he leaps into the sky and uses a possession skill that even Shikamaru will envy called the multi-puppet art. Immediately, the gang members and the police officers turn on each other and start whooping each other's behinds. When L lands, Paco admits that his brother's technique is insane, and Anna agrees that L seems to have completely mastered possession-type techniques. Paco recalls that possession means to transfer one's consciousness into someone else to control them, so he wonders how L can control multiple minds at once while keeping his own intact, since handling one person is the limit. With all the gang members and police officers taken down, Sean ditches them in the police vehicle. Shortly after, Caldo returns, and he reports that there is nothing here either. L tells the team that they have to move faster. Meanwhile, some guy spies on the group from the top of a building, and he admires L's skill. Sometime later, L looks at a picture of his sister Fana, and he asks her to wait a little longer because he'll find her. At the Shabuteca Federal Police Headquarters building, in the director's office, Sean looks at a picture he took together with Fana, and he asks her to forgive him. He looks at the Dem Project report on his table, and he signs in Commissioner Roberta's name there. Meanwhile, a vehicle moves through the city, heavily guarded by armored police vehicles on all sides. Marco spots them from his binoculars, and he confirms what Caldo had told them. He also notices that their target is inside the vehicle. Anina identifies their target as Sanchez Crawford, the chairman of Yorknesia's National Oil Company, and the biggest patron of the ruling Freedom Party, who are the real power behind the government, and the mastermind who conspired with the Yorknesian president to build a system of exploitation. Paco, who knows nothing about the political climate of their country, just concludes that their target must be a bad guy. Meanwhile, at the National Oil Company top floor, one of the men guarding the door whines about why they're guarding this place, and wonders why the richest man in the country can't hire some real guards. The other person tells him to stop whining, because it's their boss's orders. Suddenly, one of the actual guards busts in and drops from blood loss. Shocked, the men wonder what happened, and the collapsed man says that the ninja did this. The men head out to check things out, but before they can call for help, Caldo jumps down and disposes of them. At the entourage point, Paco leaps on the soldiers with a barrage of flames, and he knocks them down with explosions. Anna praises how well he deployed his skills today by saying he's on fire, which is also quite literal, but Marco just reminds Paco not to hit him with his fire. Meanwhile, L takes down several police officers in his path, and reaches Sanchez's car, where he tells him to come down and beg for his useless life. However, Sean suddenly comes out and tells L that he stole his line. Sean points out that L is the terrorist, so the men behind him open fire on L, forcing him to dodge the attack. They start to open fire with their trucks, and Paco becomes worried about his brother's safety. Suddenly, some police officers that look like RoboCop from earlier are released, and they lock in on L as their target. Several of the robot officers swoop in to fight L, and Paco pushes past several officers to go help his brother. Meanwhile, Sanchez laughs devilishly, and he mentions that this move can be useful if mass-produced. Sean thanks him but adds that the one they brought is only a prototype and explains that the true power of Dem is far beyond this. Sanchez tells him he looks forward to seeing this. At the National Oil Company chairman's office, Caldo looks around in the office and finds a secret entrance. Through the door, he enters a secret lab where he finally finds Fana floating in a huge glass. Caldo laughs excitedly, and he's certain that he can surpass even L with what he's found. Suddenly, he's stabbed from behind and he falls to the ground. His attacker walks past him towards the vial where Fana is, and he asks Fana to return home with him. Meanwhile, L activates his powers and Paco unleashes his Sunflame strike on the bots. Anna immediately tells L to get back because Paco is using a jutsu he can't control again, but L doesn't move out of the way. Paco himself falls into the fire, and Marco realizes Paco will burn himself to death at this rate. When L notices this, he communicates with the team and tells them he's leaving the rest to him, and he uses a possession ninjutsu of the final secret art called the War God's Resonance, because he can't let Paco get killed. While Paco is overwhelmed by the fire, L possesses his body and sees his soul. On the inside, L tells Paco that it's been a while since they've talked face to face, but Paco jokes that his big brother is a busy man who's trying to make the country better. However, L explains that he's not worthy of that because he couldn't even protect the woman that he loves, Fana. Paco tells him that what happened to Fana wasn't his fault, and says it's his fault because he took his eyes off her. L recalls that a lot has changed since Fana was kidnapped 3 years ago, and he realizes that Sean in particular won't forgive him. When Paco reminds him that he hasn't changed, L rubs his head and tells his little brother that he's right. because he's the one who's always the same. While they're joking, El tells Paco to follow the path he believes in because he believes he's the true savior who will change the country. This surprises Paco, but his big brother tells him to go to the Forest of Beginnings and train again. Meanwhile, in the real world, Anna is shocked to realize the flames are moving above El's head, and Marco realizes that El took on Paco's entire out-of-control jutsu, which is a problem. Paco soon comes to his senses, and he's shocked to see that El is about to be engulfed by the fireball. As El is consumed by the fire, he smiles at his little brother, and Paco goes blank as he witnesses his brother destroyed in the explosion. Tears start to stream down from his eyes, and he screams in horror, but Marco tells him that they have to leave because El would have died for nothing if they catch them there. With the whole place engulfed in fire, Sean looks up and concludes that it's all over, but he's suddenly stabbed from behind by Anna, who tells him that this is vengeance for El. With Sean put down, Anna tells Sanchez she's letting him go today, but she swears that she'll kill him the next time they meet. Sometime after that time, the newspapers become flooded with reports of assassinations of Yorknesia corporate executives, terror incidents, and the fact that Yorknesia-based companies are considering withdrawal. They wonder who these mysterious terrorists are, but the image on the cover is Paco wearing a mask. At a Yorknesia-affiliated Bayside hotel, a Fat Cat company president is caught humping his young blood side chick right after they came from a Coldplay concert. When the man sees Paco's blood-stained blade, he pleads that his life be spared, and he swears that no one knows where Chairman Sanchez is. However, Paco didn't come here for his stories, so he slices his fat head in half. Shortly after, the report of the murder of the president of the Yorknesia-affiliated transport company reaches the Huateca police headquarters. Commissioner Roberta states that this is the 8th murder that has happened within 3 months, and they can't let them run loose any longer. Sean stands in front of her, having recovered from his injuries, and he asks her why he was summoned here despite being suspended for disciplinary actions. Roberta tells him to relax because she took the liberty of signing off on the approval he faked, even though he nearly got himself killed by that vigilante. She explains that she's not here to scold his incompetencies, but because the council has finally approved the plan. This shocks Sean, so Roberta tells him his suspension is lifted, and he's going to return to duty as the director in charge of the DEM project. Sometime later at the ninja hideout, Anna and Marco wait for Caldo, and they wonder what's keeping him. Later, Marco asks Anna if she doesn't think they've started to act like villains recently, but Anna tells him he can always quit if he doesn't like it. Marco explains that he didn't say that, but Paco seems to have changed into something. Paco, who was standing nearby, completes the sentence and asks if he's become a killing machine. When they notice him, he simply goes to grab his mask and he says he no longer has an identity, but he's just going to be the machine that'll make his brother's dreams come true, and he promises to eliminate anyone who stands in his way. When he steps out, Anna mentions that someone has to look after Paco, so Marco and Anna head out after him to support him in whatever destruction he set his heart on. On their wall, a dart is stuck into a picture of Chairman Sanchez. Meanwhile, Sanchez is chilling at a lab where he asks Sean if the work is complete. Sean agrees that they've obtained the finest materials thanks to the chairman's help, and he shows him the ultimate weapon that will save the nation, the DEM Model H. At the Alegria's suburbs of Huacheca, Paco and the others lock horns with members of the mafia. Shortly after, Paco is injured and he can't believe his eyes, as he's faced by one of the DEM robots. Paco demands to know who the bot is, but he gets no response because he doesn't know it's a robot, so he thinks the guy is quite creepy. Eventually, the DEM-H bot tries to blast him with its hand, so Paco tries to jump out of the way. When the bot calculates the trajectory of his movement, the bot aims forward and blasts Paco's leg. The others become alarmed, and Marco realizes the enemy is predicting their movements. Immediately, the bot lifts a bike in the air with one hand and chucks it at Paco. Marco wonders what kind of power the enemy could have used to throw a bike so easily, so he throws an explosive dart at the bike, while Anna goes to help Paco up. At this point, his leg is now bleeding, so the bot flies into the air and lands right in front of them. With one kick, it knocks them apart, but Marco quickly catches Anna before she hits her head on a rock or something, but they're both knocked into the wall. Meanwhile, the robot lifts Paco by the throat. While Paco struggles with the bot, he suddenly remembers his brother, and his brother's bird comes out of nowhere and starts to attack the bot. Although the bird can't do much damage, it forces the bot to drop Paco. The bot aims at the bird but hesitates, so it receives a command to shoot immediately, and it blasts the bird's wings into pieces. Marco quickly snags Anna to escape, and he swears to himself that he'll come back for Paco. Clearly hasn't read the Bros Code, where it's clearly written that bros before hoes. What a simp. Left alone, Paco is surrounded by the robot and police vehicles. Later, Sean steps out to inspect Paco, while the scientists check their precious creation. Sean pulls off Paco's mask and is intrigued to find out he's the one. He immediately tells his men to take him into custody, and the scientists tell him they found no problem with the DEM robot. However, he's also told that the sudden malfunction observed will require detailed analysis at the lab. In a flashback, Paco and El train, and Elle tells him he did nicely after he lands a strong punch. Nearby, Fana watches them train and Sean soon asks to join her. She asks him if he's done training already, but Sean confesses that he wouldn't last very long if he kept up with Elle and Paco, since they're special. Elle soon generates a water attack, but while Paco tries to do his own jutsu, the water lands in his face. This makes Fana and Sean laugh, but it annoys Paco that Fana laughed at him. Later, Fana asks Elle to come grab some lunch, so Elle decides to race Paco to reach Fana, and he offers to teach him any ninjutsu he wants if he beats him. That makes Paco light up, so he says he wants to learn a fire jutsu, and they begin racing. In the present, Paco is admitted at the Huateca Federal Police Hospital, where he's tied down to his bed. Paco wakes up from his dream about Elle, but Sean soon enters and calls him by his full name, accusing him of inheriting the criminal will of his brother by engaging in terrorist activities. Annoyed, Paco tells him his brother is no criminal, so Sean asks him what his brother is. Sean insists that Elle was a villain, but Paco tells him his brother fought to save the country from Yorknesia. Sean brings up the various murders and says that they were free to fight the mafia and wipe each other out, but they're performing acts of terrorists that endanger civilians. However, Paco protests that they've never involved ordinary people in their fights. Because of that, Sean shows him the result of the actions by showing footage of the streets, which are overflowing with unemployed people who struggle daily, and are divided between pro-Yorknesian and anti-Yorknesian factions, with riots breaking out everywhere. Sean explains that the number of casualties is through the roof, so he grabs Paco's head to look at the screen properly. As Paco's about to defend his brother's actions, Sean tells him that he doesn't understand a single one of his brother's wishes. Meanwhile, Anna asks Marco about Elle's hawk, so he tells her he left it at the hospital because it was badly injured, but he was told it should be able to fly again. Eventually, Marco asks what kind of monster they faced, so Anna explains that it was just a robot, but it had a strange aura about it. This annoys Marco, and he wonders if this is where it ends for them, since Paco has been captured. Anna tells him not to be a fool since they can always go to find him since he's not dead. Confused, Marco asks how they're going to rescue him, so Anna shows him a map. Marco asks what the map is, so Anna explains that it's the route they'll transport Paco in. Apparently, Paco will be transferred to the police headquarters as soon as he recovers from his injuries, and they'll take a zigzag route to avoid being tracked. However, there's a bridge they'll have to cross on the way, and it can only support the weight of a single vehicle because it's old. She explains that this is their chance, since the security will be the weakest. Once again, Paco sees his brother, and he asks him if he was wrong. Paco starts to despair that he was never good enough, and when Elle just smiles, he begs him to say something. Elle just keeps smiling until he's engulfed by a strange energy that pushes Paco backwards. Elle soon touches his face and he tells him that he's always watching over him. This confuses Paco, but before he can get a reply, Elle's essence is devoured by the nasty robot that Paco fought against. Paco comes face to face with the robot and curses at it, but the robot just blasts him in the stomach, piercing a hole in his stomach. Sometime later, Paco wakes up in the hospital, and Sean, who is standing nearby, is glad to see that he's awake. After looking around, Paco asks Sean why he interfered with his brother, so Sean explains that it's just a difference in opinion. Sean points out that his goal, which was also Elle's, is to free Yorknesia from this country's rule, but their methods are simply different. In another flashback, Sean and Elle have a fight, where Sean tries to convince Elle not to use terrorist-like methods. Sean asks him to come with him, because he'll climb the ladder, gain power, and use politics to drive the Yorknesians out. However, Elle tells him he's naive, and explains that this is a revolution, and not terrorism. Sean tells him he can't start a revolution, but Elle insists that he'll destroy the exploitive system that takes from the people, floods it with drugs, and sucks away money to Yorknesia. Sean asks Elle if he knows what happens if he destroys the country's economy, but Elle pushes him away and admits that he won't hesitate to use cruel methods if that's what it takes to remove Yorknesia. Both men soon separate and they plan to save the country on their own terms. In the present, Sean tells Paco that he can't become Elle. He tells Paco to be assured that he'll carry on Elle's will in his own way as he goes into prison. However, this annoys Paco and he says he won't let someone like Sean inherit his brother's will. Eventually, Sean tells an officer to take Paco away. Meanwhile, the scientists keep studying the Dem H-bot. When Sean comes to check on them, one of the scientists tells him that the robot's results are pretty good since it's the first time they'll use it. However, Sean asks why the robot slowed down, so the scientist explains that it's impossible to completely erase the original human personality of the robot because of its nature, and they believe that's why it slowed down. That intrigues Sean, but he states that it's only a matter of time because the original personality will disappear after a few more missions. When he removes the helmet on the robot, it turns out to be Elle's head. Sometime later, the man who stabbed Caldo tells Fana that the time of awakening is near. The man steps out and he tells his men that they're going to steal the key, and this motivates them. Meanwhile, Paco is transported away by the police, and Marco watches the whole thing from his binoculars. Marco notices the security looks quite tight, so he wonders if he should go in. Inside the truck, Paco realizes that the big robot who attacked him was an evolved model. The robot sits in front of him, and it creeps Paco out that they're puppets that can't speak without orders. Through the comms, Sean tells him that Dembot is an armed police officer crafted from the pinnacle of modern science. Sean explains that they took a living human as the base, attached nuclear armaments, and strengthened them to the limit. Sean explains that they only accept orders from him, but they can judge and act by their own will. It disgusts Paco that he's modifying living humans, but Sean says it doesn't matter if the human is alive or dead because the existence of the soul is what matters. Paco tells Sean he's hiding in a safe place without staining his hands while this bot does his deeds, but Sean tells him his loudness will only last for now, because the dem exists for the day before tomorrow. Paco starts to curse at him, but the vehicle suddenly halts after an explosion occurs. When Paco falls down, the bot pins him to the ground, but a gas is soon thrown in through the broken window of the vehicle. Immediately, the Dem H blasts through the back door and finds itself surrounded by the Meteoro's gang. Sean calls them trash and explains that Paco is the target. He eventually orders the bot to activate assault mode, and he tells him to kill them all. Immediately, the bot supercharges his hands and legs to go into a fight. However, the leader of the gang tells his men to rush to attack. As they move forward with their guns and knives, the robot appears behind them and sticks its hand through the back of one of them. The others are shocked by its swift movement, but the robot starts to take them down one by one. While it's whooping their behinds, Anna tells Marco that Meteorio's people are doing unnecessary things. However, Marco wonders what on earth this machine is because it's worse than the last time they saw it. Eventually, Anna decides to use this commotion as an avenue to sneak in to save Paco. Suddenly, the leader of the gang finds them and calls them terrorists. Surprisingly, he offers to help them. Meanwhile, one of the gang members blasts a cannon at the bot, but it flies out of the way and hits a nearby police truck. Shortly after, Paco hears someone calling his name, and it turns out to be Anna and Marco, who release him from his chains. He wonders how they found him, and instead of them escaping immediately, they have a small family reunion. Paco wonders how they were able to pull this off, so Anna reluctantly explains that they had no choice but to seek help from someone. The someone shows up, and Marco is shocked to see him. The man greets Paco because it's been a long time, but Paco recognizes him as Miguel. Shortly after, they head out and find the robot literally beating the life out of some gang members. Anna admits that the robot is a walking disaster, and Paco angrily charges at it, calling it a bastard, but Miguel holds him back and warns him he'll be killed instantly in the state that he's in. However, Paco pulls his hand back and warns him not to get in the way of him avenging his brother. Eventually, Miguel gives him a message from his brother to go to the Valley of Dawn and head for the Cave of Chains. This surprises Paco, and he recalls that the Valley of Dawn is where he and his brother were born. When Paco hesitates, Miguel tells him that Meteoro is an organization of outcasts, made up of orphans, the poor, and refugees. It's driven by a burning will to free themselves and build their own country, and they'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. Miguel tells Paco to take Meteoro's resolve with him and keep moving, so Paco agrees. After cracking a few skulls and taking them down, Sean deactivates assault mode on the bot. He tells the bot to go after Paco, but the bot realizes that Paco is gone. Because of that, Sean tells it to track Paco down, but because assault mode will cause a temporary power drop, he asks the robot to use the Mafia's bike until it auto-recharges. The bot soon gets on the bike to track down Paco. Later, at the Huataca Federal Police Headquarters, Commissioner Roberta confirms from Sean that things went according to plan. Roberta talks about the gold the Ninja Clan brought centuries ago that washed ashore from the island nation, Japan, and she hopes to get her hands on it so she can get into politics. Sean doesn't say anything, so she tells him that her seat as commissioner will be his when that happens, but Sean tells him he'll take the seat himself without waiting for her political rise. He points a gun in her face, so Roberta asks Sean if a certain person has tamed him. Sean doesn't say anything, so Roberta brings out her gun and tells him it's unfortunate that she's not the kind of lady who'll quietly fade away. Suddenly, there's a gunshot and blood is spilled. Meanwhile, Chairman Sanchez has a video call with Sean, who says he might have played things a little too well, but it's over. Sanchez congratulates him for doing what needs to be done, and adds that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Sean reminds Sanchez to keep his promise, so Sanchez assures him that he's laid the groundwork in Parliament, and he asks him to keep playing with the terrorists for now. After the call ends, Sean types his own appointment letter as Huatica's police commissioner, and he thinks about Elle and promises him that he'll save this country in his own way. Sometime later, Anna reads the news about Director Roberta's resignation because she let the ninja escape. She realizes they've become the villains, but Marco just wonders if his mom is worried about him. Anna hands Paco the paper, and he learns that Sean has been appointed as the new director, which pisses him off. Miguel, who's driving the plane, tells him they're close to the Valley of Dawn. They soon land, and Marco wonders how old man Miguel, who's not even a ninja, knows the land of Elle and Paco's ancestors. Anna admits she's only heard stories from Elle, but Miguel jokingly tells Marco it's not nice to call his savior an old man. Eventually, Paco explains that Miguel is also from the valley. This shocks the others, so Miguel explains that his mother was a Yorknesian, and he was exiled from the valley when he was a kid. Paco explains that Miguel came back to the valley a few times after that, and he taught him and his brother a lot about the outside world. They soon reach the place and they find a small village that looks like it had been burnt to ashes. As they walk through the city, Paco finds their old home and finds where he wrote that he'd defeat his brother. Marco wonders if the people evacuated because of the fire, but Paco confesses that he doesn't have any memories of the place. Even though he remembers training here as a ninja with his brother, he remembers that his brother told him that they had to move to the city because there was a fire here and they couldn't live there anymore. Anna asks Miguel if he knows anything about it, so Miguel explains that he wasn't around a while before the fire. Eventually, Marco asks Paco if this is really his birthplace, and asks about his parents, so Miguel explains that El and Paco don't have parents. Anna knocks Marco for speaking brashly, so he quickly apologizes, but Paco tells him it's fine. Soon after, Miguel suggests they go check out the training waterfall. They soon get there and it's clear that it's a huge waterfall. Paco mentions that he used to train here with his brother until sunset, so Anna asks if they had a master or trainer. Paco replies that he didn't, but his brother taught him everything he knows. Curious, Marco asks who taught El, so Miguel tells him that the general story is that their ancestors trained him. This confuses Anna, so Miguel points into the waterfall, and it shocks Paco when he realizes he's referring to the Cave of Chains. Miguel agrees, explaining that the cave that for some reason only El could enter is behind the waterfall. Paco hopes he can get stronger there and deal with that stupid robot. Sometime later, the others wait for Paco while he enters the waterfall. Marco wonders if Paco is okay, and wonders how long the training is supposed to take. Miguel explains that the flow of time is different inside the cave, and 1 minute out here can be like a whole day in there. 1 hour ago, Marco touches the water flowing through the fall and completely vanishes, to everyone's surprise. When Marco tries to rush in to save him, the water electrocutes him and pushes him back. Anna rushes to check on him, but Miguel tells Paco from outside that he's counting on him. Inside the Cave of Chains, Paco still can't believe that the cave had always been behind this waterfall. The inside of it is pitch black, but Paco is suddenly surrounded by many candles, and it looks like Bro's about to get sacrificed. Suddenly he's attacked with several shurikens, but he quickly creates a flash flame shield to protect himself. Shocked, he wonders what on earth is going on, but he's soon ambushed by some mannequin-like figures, and he kicks one of them with a flame kick. Paco activates his flame ninjutsu and deploys a move called the Dawn's Darkness Slash to slash the attackers, but he notices that they disappear after he hits them. This rattles him, so he tells them to stop hiding and come out, and the mannequin figures come out again. Outside, Anna asks Miguel why the boss of Meteor is helping them. When he doesn't reply, she guesses it must be because there's something he wants to accomplish, even if it costs him his organization. She asks him what his real objective is, so Miguel says it's Paco. Immediately, both ninjas go into attack mode, but Miguel surrenders and tells them he's joking. He explains that it's the government goons that are after Paco, but he just came to deliver something he asked him to before he died. Confused, Anna asks him if this thing he's supposed to deliver is for Paco, and Miguel says that's part of it, but there's one more thing. She asks him what the other thing is, but he just looks into the sky and says it's about time. Inside the cave, Paco uses a high-level flame ninjutsu to create a ball of fire. As he's about to pour it on his attackers, someone tells him it's enough, and grabs his hand. When Paco looks back, it turns out to be El's spirit, who tells him to calm down because he hasn't mastered the jutsu that he's about to use. Meanwhile, the Dem H-bot locates the Valley of Dawn, which Sean knows is a legacy of origin and revolution that was buried by the government. Sean watches through his computer and he tells Paco that he's finally cornered him. Shortly after, a plane flies towards the Valley of Dawn. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Paco asks his brother why he died, but El just tells him he's managed to come all the way here. Paco explains that Uncle Miguel told him it's a Miguel from him, and that surprises and pleases El. Paco tries to ask him why again, but El tells him to calm down, close his eyes and take a deep breath. Paco is skeptical because he thinks his brother might vanish if he closes his eyes, so El closes his eyes and tells him to take a deep breath. When he does, El tells him to slowly open his eyes, and they appear in the place where they used to train when they were younger. Meanwhile, the plane finally reaches the Valley of Dawn with a package loaded inside of it. Miguel is glad the plane has finally arrived, and Marco notes that the plane doesn't look like a police or military aircraft. Soon after, the plane drops a package and deploys the parachute on it so it doesn't break. Moments after, the plane explodes, shocking Anna and Marco. They wonder if the military has already caught up with them, but Miguel rushes towards the package and puts in the passcode. When the lock opens, Marco and Anna realize this is Fana, the person that El and Paco have been searching for. Miguel agrees and adds that she's a sleeping beauty waiting for a prince's kiss. Inside the cave, El explains to Paco that the Cave of Cycles is also called the Room of Souls. Apparently, their ancestors crossed the sea from the Far East and reached this land 400 years ago. The indigenous people tried to drive them out, but the power of the ninjas was far too strong. Because of this, their name spread across the country, and the country's rulers continued to persecute the clan because they were afraid of that power. Eventually, the ninjas finally found the Valley of Dawn and took it as a place of refuge. However, it was quite remote, and because they lived in fear of enemies every day, the minds of many ancestors became twisted. They believed their persecution was the fault of the ninja clan, so the foolish villagers gathered the ninjas in the cave and slaughtered them there so as to stop being persecuted. L explains that the being Paco was fighting earlier was the grudge of the ninja people, so Paco realizes that was why it felt like there was no proper resistance. L explains that this place was sacred even before their ancestors lived there. The Cave of Cycles is a place where the souls of the dead who left lingering attachments temporarily gathered. Because of that, Paco asks L if he also has lingering attachments and if he's worried about them, but L explains that that's part of it but not the full story. L explains that the ninja blood that was thought to be extinct suddenly awakened one day in him. On the day he realized it, L woke up in the cave, and he remembers seeing Paco next to him wrapped in a swaddling cloth. Since that time he kept coming to the cave, and the spirit of their ancestors taught him their clan's history, and also trained him as a ninja. He admits that he also gained his power, art that governs the soul in this place too. Paco remembers that L was always worn out when he returned, but he taught him many things. Suddenly L notices something, so he tells Paco that training starts now because there's no time. He explains the reason he's here can only be fulfilled by training him, and he asks Paco if he can keep up because it'll be a harsh training. Paco excitedly tells him to bring it on and they begin. Outside, Anna and Marco put on their masks when they notice an intruder. Marco wonders what they'll do, but Anna tells him they have no choice but to fight. Miguel asks if they're only facing this one person, but Marco explains that one of them is more than enough, but he plans to buy some time by fighting the bot until Paco returns. Inside the Cave of Chains, Paco and his brother have an intense training session, causing Paco to pant when he realizes his brother is terribly strong. El asks him if he's worn out by that little training, but Paco tells him he's not yet tired and charges at him. As their swords collide, El reminds Paco not to let his guard down for even a second, and he tells him to use his head if he wants to get stronger. While they keep fighting, El tells him that he can't win with brute force, and he reminds him not to only track the attack with his eyes, but to use his opponent's power to counterattack. He wonders how he'll do that, but El disappears out of his sight and launches a punch at him from the side. The strength of the punch knocks him on his back in an instant. Outside the cave, Anna and Marco try to hit the bot, but it moves out of the way with great speed and knocks them back. Miguel shoots at the robot, but it dodges, and when it looks around, the others realize that it's searching for Paco. Anna notices it's ignoring them and concludes that they're not even on its radar. When the robot sees Fana in the vial, Anna rushes to block its path. The robot immediately rushes to punch Anna out of the way, but Miguel comes to push her out, and he gets punched in the chest with the robot's hand coming out behind him. After Miguel collapses, the bot approaches Fana, and Sean wonders if this is the real Fana. He can't believe his eyes. Meanwhile, Anna tries to help Miguel, but he tells her that his role is done. She asks him what his role is, so he says it's to bring back El's soul to where El and Fana's bodies are. As his life seeps out of him, Anna wonders what on earth he's talking about, and what he means by El's body. As El's bird flies by, Miguel flashes back to a time when El introduced Fana to him as his fiancée. Fana tells Miguel it's nice to meet him and says she's heard a lot about him, but Miguel jokes that it probably wasn't anything good that she heard. Fana tells him El said he's like his brother, which shocks Miguel and that intrigues him. As the couple walks away, in the present, Miguel thanks El for considering a fake like him a brother. He thinks about the brother he's already lost, so he tells them he'll be joining them soon, and he hopes they can drink over on the other side until morning. In the Cave of Chains, El and Paco train on hand-to-hand combat. While they're training, Miguel tells Paco that he's gotten better at controlling his body, and he seems like a completely different person. It shocks the brothers to see Miguel, so Paco asks him what he's doing here. Miguel explains that he has some business to take care of. Confused, Paco knows only he and his brother, or soul, should be able to enter the cave, but Miguel just jokes by saying, who knows why he's here. Eventually, Miguel tells El he did what he asked him to, so El apologizes for the trouble, and he thanks him and everyone at Meteoro for bringing Paco here. Miguel admits that he did it for the two of them, and El thanks him. When Miguel mentions that the robot showed up, Paco almost loses his mind, and he tries to run out, but El stops him. El reminds him that his training isn't finished, but Paco tells him that Anna and Marco are going to get killed, but Miguel tells him that they're going to be fine. He explains that the robot stopped moving the moment it saw Fana, so things should be okay for a while. Confused, Paco wonders if they found Fana, and Miguel says they did. El thanks Miguel for that, but Paco tries to rush El to go meet Fana. He soon remembers that his brother is already dead, and he almost goes bonkers again. Eventually, El calms him down and tells him he has two things to do. One of them is to master his control over fire, and the second is to learn his technique. Shocked, Paco insists that it's impossible for him to learn his brother's technique, but El tells him that everything he taught him was the foundation for it, and he's been able to pick it up faster than anyone else could. He tells Paco that he'll be able to see Fana again if he masters it. That surprises Paco, so El explains that this is the reason his soul stayed in this world, and it's because his soul and his body are waiting for the moment of reunion. When Paco hears that his brother is going to come back to life, he becomes stoked. Outside the cave, Anna and Marco try their luck with the robot again, and when it doesn't move, Marco wonders if it's out of batteries or something. Anna points out that it doesn't look like something that'll run out of power easily, and when Marco taps the robot, it falls on his side, startling him. In the city, the scientists rush around to try to reboot the robot with Sean on their arses. The scientists explain that the robot is rejecting all signals, so Sean asks what caused it to shut down. They tell him it might have entered self-isolation mode, which happens when too much uncontrolled data floods the subject's brain. This causes a safety mechanism to activate that temporarily shuts down brain function. Annoyed, Sean grabs the scientist and demands to know when it'll wake up, but the scientist tells him they don't know and they believe it should naturally reboot once the brain's overload subsides. Sean pushes the scientist to the ground and he tells his men to prepare the helicopter because he's going in. In the cave, Paco keeps training his control of flame, but it keeps turning to dust. When he fails again, he tells El that he can't do this, but El reminds him he can't give up because his comrades are counting on him. El generates the fireball again, and Miguel commends his genius control. El demonstrates it to Paco and tells him it took him years to master it, even while training from their ancestors. El confesses he's no genius, at least not compared to Paco. Paco asks him what he's talking about, and says he only gets it right once in a while, so El asks him who taught him fire techniques. After hesitating, Paco explains that he just copied what his brother did, because he never wanted to teach him real ninjutsu because he said it was too dangerous. It surprises Miguel that Paco was able to learn by imitation, and El agrees. El throws a fireball at Paco, but he holds it about an inch from his face. Paco exclaims and asks him what he's doing, so El explains that Paco's unconsciously afraid of fire. Paco wonders what he means and how he could be afraid of fire. Meanwhile, Sean is shocked when he confirms that it's his sister that's in the vial. Tears start to pour down from his eyes, but he assures Fauna that he'll soon come to save her. In the Cave of Chains, Paco finally gets up after his fear of flames is confronted. El tells him to grab the flame since he's a user of flame ninjutsu, and it should be simple for him. Paco tries to grab the flame, and when he does, he sees a vision of the day their town burned and they scurried around, and he sees a vision of El, which makes him start to sweat profusely. Paco quickly retracts from the fire, so El asks him what he saw. He explains that he saw a village enveloped with fire, and he saw El burning in that fire as well. So Miguel figures that he's referring to the fire that burned the village to the ground. Shocked, Paco asks if he was the one responsible for the fire, but El tells him that's not true. Immediately, El grabs him and tells him that's a false memory. El explains that Paco used his flame ninjutsu to protect the village when he was little. He adds that the village had cut off all ties with the outside world and was living peacefully, but the village was secretly chosen as an experiment site for newly developed weapons because of Sanchez Crawford, who was an advisor to the government forces. Apparently, El returned to the village after finishing his trainings, and he found Paco using the ultimate secret art of flame ninjutsu, called the Twin Dragon Flame Strike, to manipulate 2 dragon fires and incinerate the soldiers. This surprises Paco, so El tells him that some people survived because of him and were able to move to other lands. El shows him the blazing dance blade they left for Paco as a token of their gratitude. When Paco grabs the blade, his hand and the blade become encircled in a great flame, and when Paco manages to stabilize it, 2 flame dragons appear. El tells Paco not to be afraid because the flame is assessing whether he's worthy to be their master. He asks him to remember the time when he manipulated flame dragons, so Paco tries to remember. When the memory returns to him, he decides to accept the flame, and it finally stabilizes. When that happens, he gains control of the sword, which surprises Miguel and gives Elfeng its satisfied sensei look. Moments after, Paco releases twin dragons from his blade, and El tells him that he's truly a genius. Outside the cave, Marco looks into the glass and considers how beautiful Fauna is. When he sees El's hawk flying over them, he's glad it can fly again, and he wonders if the hawk came after Paco. Meanwhile, Anna tries to piece together some clothes so that Fauna doesn't wake up naked. When Marco sees the clothes, he realizes that it's Anna's taste because she likes skimpy clothes, and when Anna asks him to speak up, he claims that he said nothing at all so he doesn't get martyred. Suddenly they spot a chopper overhead and they figure out that it must be the police. Marco immediately tries to hide, but when he sees Anna looking into the glass vial, he wonders if she's planning to take the container with her. Anna insists that they have to, since she's El's fiancée, and she won't be able to face El if she abandons his fiancée. Marco has no choice but to give in, but the problem is that neither of them knows the passwords. They try several passwords like Meteoro, Pacoel, Huatica Banzai, but the one that opens it is slightly naughty handsome old man. Miguel obviously deserved to be killed. The vial immediately opens up, and Fauna falls down in another perfect position that conceals her privates. Marco suddenly starts to get hot because this is the closest he's ever gotten to a naked woman. But Anna pokes his eyes to stop him from staring and tells him to turn around so she can cover herself up. While Anna dresses her up, she wonders when Fana will wake up, but Marco suddenly recalls that Fana hasn't been breathing for a while. When Anna hears that, she checks the girl's heartbeat and realizes her heart isn't beating either. However, because of the chopper, they carry her naked body and run away so they can get her changed. Shortly after, the chopper lands nearby the fall, and Sean comes down with a scientist and a soldier. Sean orders them to quickly try to restart the bot, but he's shocked when he notices the vial is empty. He runs there with tears in his eyes, and he angrily punches the glass, causing his hands to bleed. He wonders who might have taken his sister, but Marco and Anna just watch from a nearby bush. Anna figures they must be searching for them, and Marco wonders what Police Captain Sean would want with Fana. Anna tells him that Sean is Fana's elder brother, and Marco almost loses his mind. Before he can shout, Anna blocks his mouth and warns him not to shout so loudly. She tells him about how Elle once told her that his fiancé has an older brother. Based on the similarity in their hair, skin color, and facial features, she's pretty sure Sean is the person he was talking about. Marco wonders if that means they should return the body to Sean, but Anna taps his head and tells him he's an idiot because there must be a reason Miguel brought this girl here. Marco can't wrap his mind around it, but Anna believes Elle must be extraordinary, and she wonders if he foresaw this exact situation they're in. Anna suddenly gets up and says she wants to go speak with Sean, so she tells Marco to take care of Fana. Marco tries to stop her, but Anna tells him that this is what Elle said he wants. On the field, the scientists check through the robot's systems, and when they stabilize things, they decide to restart in emergency mode. Suddenly, the bot comes back to life, so the scientists explain to Sean that the bot is in emergency mode and can only move but can't engage in combat. Sean orders the robot to search the surroundings, and when it does, it detects 2 people in the bushes. Sean tells his soldiers to head to the training waterfall, while he chases down the person in the waterfall. Armed with a gun, he looks around, but when he hears a sound, he quickly turns back, hoping that it's Fana. He calls out that and tries to tell Fana that he's her brother, but the person who comes out of the bushes turns out to be Anna. Sean realizes she's the person who stabbed him, and as he's about to shoot her, she drops her weapon and removes her mask. This surprises Sean, but Anna tells him that she wants to speak to him about his sister. Meanwhile, Marco carries Fana on his back and takes her to the waterfall. He's quite exhausted and he wonders why Anna asked him to carry this girl to the waterfall. Suddenly, he's ambushed by the bot and the soldiers who tell him not to move. However, the bot suddenly starts to malfunction when it gets close, and then it collapses on its knees. In the woods, Sean learns from Anna that his sister will come back to life, but he doesn't believe what he's hearing, and he asks her to explain more. In the Cave of Chains, Paco develops more mastery, and when he's attacked by some of their ancestors who are trying to train him, he easily blocks their attack. Using a possession flame ninjutsu, which is an ultimate union secret, he uses a technique called the soul-slaying twin dragon flame strike on them and burns them to pieces. When that happens, Miguel commends Paco's skill and asks if he's already surpassed Elf. Elle admits that Paco surpassed him a long time ago because he worked hard, so he tells him that his training is over. He tells Paco that he will save the country from deep darkness because he's the Sun Flame. Paco thanks them, so Elle tells him that the preparations outside are complete. Outside the cave, Marco can't believe what has happened, and he wonders why things have gone this way. In the cave, Paco wonders what his brother means by saying the preparations are done, but a strange energy suddenly teleports both the bot and Fana's body into the cave, shocking him. He tries to signal Elle, but Elle tells him he knew everything. Paco wonders what he's talking about, so Elle calms him down and explains that a dead person is no longer human once they lose their soul. He tells him that he should be able to feel it because he's mastered the secret technique. Paco looks at him like he's explaining quantum physics, so Elle reminds him what he told him about how Fana's soul is searching for a vessel that can hold a living soul. Paco soon remembers, so Elle teases his carelessness and tells him to hold his hands over both bodies, focus his mind, and look into the memory of their souls. Using the possession art technique called critical soul vision, Paco sees when Fana's soul leaves her body and goes into Elle's hawk. He also sees the vision of when Elle's soul left his body right before the explosion. When he removes the cover over the bot's face, he discovers that it's Elle's body. Outside the cave, Anna and Sean find Marco close to the fall. Marco tells Anna that Fana's body stopped moving and she was suddenly sucked into the waterfall and disappeared. Sean immediately rushes towards the waterfall to find Fana, and Marco tries to stop him, but he doesn't listen. When he gets close to the water, he gets electrocuted and thrown back, so he realizes what's up. Anna soon informs him that only those who have ninja blood or the souls of the dead can enter the waterfall, and that makes Marco wonder why Fana and the robot were sucked in. Anna starts to think about it too, so she asks Sean if Fana was connected to the robot somehow. However, Sean is unable to answer because they're going to skin him if he tells them he turned their boss into a robot zombie. Inside the cave, Paco realizes that neither Elle nor Fana is dead. Elle affirms this and explains that he separated his soul right before the point of death. But unlike Fana, he had no vessel to transfer into, so he had no choice but to remain in the cave along with the souls of the dead. He explains that Fana wished for this to happen of her own will, but Sanchez took her away right after that. Confused, Paco asks why Fana transferred her soul, so Elle explains that it was to protect the hidden treasure. Paco doesn't know what he's talking about, so Elle explains that there's a secret treasure taken by the ninjas who once slept in this valley. It's because of this treasure that Sanchez attacked the valley under the pretense of a classified weapons experiment. Paco still doesn't understand what Fana has to do with the ninja treasure, but Elle suddenly starts to fade away before he explains. This alarms Paco, so L explains that he's been in the spirit form for way too long, so he tells Paco to return the fragments of his soul and Fana's soul to their vessels. He tells Paco to use his ultimate possession ninjutsu called War God's Resonance Return 2. Sounds like a video game. Paco can't fathom this because it's L's final secret art, and he becomes worried he might fail, but L tells him not to think about it. L tells him that he's mastered the flame ninjutsu secrets, and he wields both blades of sealing flame and souls, so he can do this. The hawk soon lands on Paco's shoulder, so L tells him that Fana agrees that he can do it too, but Paco can't wrap his head around the fact that this is really Fana. The hawk rubs her beak on him, so L tells Paco to have faith because he's a full-fledged ninja that's recognized by him. Eventually, Paco promises to bring back both of their souls. Paco focuses all his attention, and when L starts to disappear, Miguel tells him goodbye. L thanks Miguel for everything, but Miguel tells him not to mention it because he saved his life and he was glad to be able to help. L promises to save this country, and tells Miguel to watch. Meanwhile, Paco taps into the War God's Resonance Technique return formula, and he pulls both souls out of the vessels they're in. Finally, L sees Fana, and he tells her it's time to awaken. After that, Paco uses a lot of energy to get them back into their bodies, and he's spent after doing that. Oddly, neither of them gets back up, so Miguel and Paco become worried. Suddenly, both of them wake up and they embrace each other. Excited, Paco goes to hug the both of them. While they're having their reunion, the foundation of the cave is suddenly rocked, and Paco wonders if it's an earthquake. However, L explains that it's not an earthquake but the shockwave from bombing. Outside the cave, several choppers blast the rock with missiles, and Sean wonders if they're from Sanchez's army. Marco points out that it's the regular army, so Sean realizes that Sanchez has taken control of the military. When Sean realizes that Fana is in danger, he runs ahead to stop them, but Anna stops him and asks him if he wants to die. When he insists, Anna tells him Paco and L are with him. Suddenly, Paco releases his Sunflame Strike and blasts down the choppers that were firing at them. The others are glad to realize that Paco brought them down, but they're startled by a nearby sound that turns out to be the bot carrying Fana on his back. Anna and Marco go into fight mode, but they're surprised when the bot calls their name and tells them it's been a while. Elle removes the mask and both of them almost burst with excitement. Sean soon spots his sister, so he rushes to meet her. However, an explosion occurs nearby, but it's just Paco messing around, and he comes out with his goofy smile to tell Elle he's taken care of everything. Shortly after, they notice that the soldiers are still moving around, so Marco wonders if they're still looking for them. Sean tells him what they're actually looking for is the hidden treasure. When Elle hears that, he decides there's no other way than for him to bury the valley. After apologizing to his ancestors, he releases a great flood of water from the fall, and covers up the entire valley with water, burying the soldiers with it. Later, Marco asks what they're going to do about the hidden treasure, but Elle doesn't say anything. Shortly after, they enter the cave through another entrance, and Sean asks Fana if she's okay when he notices something. Fana apologizes to her brother and explains that she's Fana, and she's not Fana. He asks her what she means, so she explains that two souls are inside her body. Apparently, when she was young, Sanchez kidnapped her to get to her father, who was the leader of the Huatica liberation movement. After being kidnapped, she fell into despair and tried to take her own life, but Elle appeared and saved her from Sanchez. Because of this, she chose to become the vessel for the leader of the ninja, and so her soul merged and became one with that of the ninja leader. Sean is surprised to hear that this is what happened, because he remembers a time when Fana suddenly disappeared. He was told that she was overseas for medical treatment, but he now realizes Sanchez silenced his parents. Fana explains that Elle protected her from the shadows when she returned home. Sean grabs Elle and asks him why he kept something so important secret from him, but Fana tells Sean to stop it. She explains that she was the one who told Elle to do it. Originally, her soul was supposed to be completely erased, and her body would have become for the ninja leader, but Elle left her soul intact to grant her wish, and he merged her soul with the soul of the ninja leader. Sean wonders what wish she's talking about, so Elle explains that she wanted to spend time with her brother one more time, so Fana accepted everything to have that wish granted. As they move deeper into the cave, they run into a dead end, but Elle signals to Fana, so she touches the wall and a radiant energy comes out of her body. The energy lights the wall up and a door opens to them, revealing a place filled with flowers called poppies. The radiance of the place is blinding, and it turns out this forbidden garden that only the leader of the ninja is allowed to enter is the hidden treasure. Apparently, there are enough poppies here to control the entire world's drug market. Sanchez tried to kidnap Fana, who's the key to getting his hands on this. Just before he could do that, Elle extracted his soul and had it possess a hawk. Elle also adds that he and Paco were born to be the guardians of the ninja leader. Elle's supposed to have his soul possess a suitable woman, then through her grow up and take over the role until the day where they can revive the land of the ninja in a foreign country. However, over time, Elle started to reconsider reviving the dying ninja clan, and instead thought about using the power of the ninja for the country's independence. Fana agreed with him, and Elle says that's when he met Sean, a man who shared the same ambition with him. Elle thanks Sean for leaving his body for him even in such a state, and he thanks everyone for their contribution. However, Sean tells Elle that he can't go with him right now, because he plans to change this country in his own way. Elle doesn't argue and tells him he thought he might say that, so Elle sets the entire garden on fire. He tells them they're better off without something like this, and he says they'll end this curse with their generation. 5 years later, 2 kids named Florencia and Hernandez run around the house, but Paco tells them to be quiet. They call him uncle and try to push the blame on each other, but Paco warns them that they're going to make their mother angry. Their mother Fana calls the kids to come join her, and she hugs them. She warns them that their father, who's in heaven, will be sad if they don't get along, so they decide to settle down. Suddenly Fana starts to cough, which worries them, but when Paco asks her if she's fine, she says she is. Shortly after, Paco heads out, and Fana asks him to look after someone. He tells her he will, and he greets his niece and nephew goodbye. Moments after, Paco, Marco, and Ana go somewhere. Marco asks if the kids are Elle's kids, and he someday hopes he can have a family, and he sneaks a peek at Ana. Paco asks them how Elle is doing, and they tell him he's at his limits, so he decides to hurry. Meanwhile in the city, Sean leads some men who seem to have formed a revolution away from the military. He even has an eye patch to show the nasty things he's been through. Sean tells the men that they, the Revolutionary Army, are the only ones who can stop dictator Sanchez now. He urges them to rise up before Sanchez destroys their country. The men are quite motivated, and Roberta soon appears to tell Sean he's grown into the role of leader. Sean tells her he's not grown as much as her, since she's the leader of the revolution. Roberta explains that since the day Sean saved her, she's been operating underground, and she's been expanding her influence for this very moment. In a flashback, Roberta says she's not the kind of lady to be crushed easily. However, Sean later stops her, shoots himself in the arm, and shoots a nearby glass while Sanchez is listening over the comms. Roberta doesn't initially know what he's saying, but when she realizes it, she recognizes that he's willing to go this far to change the country. In the present, she remembers that he shot through his left arm to keep her alive, and she has now decided to lend a hand to her hopeless subordinate. Sean admits that it's all thanks to Elle, and when Roberta asks about him, Sean says he's still on the front lines. Meanwhile, Elle keeps battling evil wearing his robo-suit, and his team comes in to support him. While Ana and Marco kick Soldier behind, Paco rushes in with a flame ninjutsu called Phoenix Flame Grenade. He releases a huge explosion that takes out all the soldiers, and then he goes to check on Elle. Elle tells him he saved them, but because Elle's suit is malfunctioning, Paco tells him not to push himself in his condition. Elle replies that he doesn't have time, but Paco asks him if he's going to leave Fana and the kids behind. Elle answers that there's no way he can let them see him like this, so Paco asks if that's why he pretends to be dead instead. Eventually, Paco asks Marco if he can fix the suit, but Marco confesses that he's reached his limit, and anything more will require specialized equipment. Elle gets up to continue despite Paco's protest, and he tells Paco that he has to help Sean, and he tells him he's counting on him to look after Fana and the children. Elle tells Paco that he's going to stop moving soon, and he asks him to stop chasing after him. He tells Paco that he's entrusting the future of the country to him. As Elle walks away, Paco tears up, and he calls his brother a great big idiot. Sometime later, some soldiers hold some people at gunpoint. The soldiers claim they have intel that this is where the rebels are hiding, so they tell the men to come clean so they'll let them go. The men claim they don't know anything about the rebel army, so the soldiers start to kill them. Suddenly, the soldier in charge gets a sword pushed through his back and he drops to the ground. The others start firing frantically, but the assailant uses their leader as a shield and disappears. While they look around for where he went, the assailant starts cutting them down with lightning speed. The men start to thank the assailant for saving them, but the man attacks one of the men who comes to thank him. Suddenly, the assailant's sword is shot down by Sean, who came with his men, so Sean tells Elle, who was covered in the cape, to wake up already. Elle's body starts to malfunction, so Sean asks him if he's forgotten the people he's supposed to protect. Ribbledabout leaps toward Sean to attack him, but his men open fire to protect their boss. Suddenly, the soldiers show up again, and Sean's men are also forced to engage them in combat. They soon realize they're outnumbered, but fire suddenly rains down from the sky and burns up the soldiers. It turns out to be Paco and his team, and he apologizes for keeping them waiting. The men are excited to see that the ninja have arrived, and the team soon goes berserk on the soldiers until they're forced to retreat. While they're running, Paco tells them to tell their master that Ninja will soon drag him down. The men rejoice after hearing that, and Ana tells Paco that he has some nerves, but Marco hopes to see how long that lasts. However, Paco tells them to shut up and hurry to take down Sanchez and declare independence from Yorknesia. Shortly after, Sean shows up wounded, so Paco asks him what happened. Sean tells him to hurry to the mountain lodge, and when Paco reaches there, he finds the place destroyed, and he finds one of the soldiers with his niece and nephew. When they see him, they cry and tell him that their mother was kidnapped, and Ana wonders who on earth would do that. Sean explains that it was Elle, and he says he tried to stop it, but he apologizes because he was unable to. Shocked, Paco asks what he means, so Sean explains that the organic parts of Elle's body can no longer be maintained, so Elle's brain has taken too much load and his mind is breaking down. Also, he adds that Fana's soul has begun to deteriorate because of centuries of reincarnation. Anna wonders where the two of them are, and Sean guesses they might be with someone who can interfere with Elle's runaway program. Meanwhile, at the presidential residence of the new government, Sanchez is glad Elle has finally returned. Sanchez orders his men to begin the preparations for the day, and he says that these scraps will be of no use once they're done, so they can return them to their families. Sometime later, it's reported on the news that the new government is preparing to sign a security treaty with Yorknesia, and this will place the nation under Yorknesia's economic protection, which raises growing concerns about colonization. Meanwhile, Paco and the others gather for Elle's burial. After paying their respects, Florencia says her old man looks happy because he's surrounded by flowers, but Hernandez apologizes to the others because of how clueless she is, since their dad is dead. While they run around, Paco cries, and he apologizes to his brother for making him carry all the pain. Eventually, he decides to wipe his tears, and he promises the others that he'll carry on his brother's will. He tells them of his plan to take down Sanchez, and then make Sean the leader of the country, and he tells them he'll find Fana no matter what. Sean and the others come closer to show their agreement. That evening, another grand and quiet event happens. The night that will decide Hawataka's fate begins. After taking down the soldiers outside the residence of Hawataka's new president, Paco and his team take down several soldiers and break in to find Sanchez. While they're looking around, Anna points out how Sanchez lives a life of luxury off people's money, and her voice draws out one of the soldiers. The soldier shoots at her, but since there's no way for her to move out of the way, Marco quickly jumps in front of her to take the bullet. Paco rushes back to check on him, but Anna carries him in her hands and starts to cry. She calls him an idiot and asks him if he thinks someone like her would be easily taken down like that. However, Marco just says he's glad she's fine and mentions that his mom must probably be worried about him. After handing Anna the last fragment of his mask, he tells her that it looks like he won't get to see Hawataka's transformation. As life seeps out of him, he says he hopes he's now caught up to Paco, and he asks Paco to save everyone, then dies. This infuriates Paco, but he immediately tells Anna they have to move ahead because they can't stop now. Shortly after, they break into Sanchez's private chambers, so Sanchez asks them if they know what day it is today while facing the window. Anna recognizes the voice as Sanchez's, so Paco wastes no time to use his Flame King Solar Slash to end him right there. After setting Sanchez on fire, they're surprised to see Sanchez walk out of the fire. This time he's dressed in the robot uniform like Elle was, which shocks them. Sanchez asks them if they received his gift, referring to Elle's body, and he admits that Elle and Fana were quite useful. He says all of this was to obtain the one thing he wants the most, which is an immortal body. Paco starts to burn with great rage, and Sanchez realizes that the guardian spirit of the flame awakens within Paco. Sanchez finds it amusing and wonders what Paco can still do after he's lost his comrades and his brother. Sanchez blasts him with his hands and tells him he'll take him to Nuevo Cielo Church, the resting place of his ancestors. However, he blasts Anna instead and makes a hole in her stomach, causing her to drop to the ground. Sanchez asks Paco to come with him since he's truly alone, and as he flies out, Paco follows after him with burning rage. When they get to the Nuevo Cielo Church, Paco lands there with a great explosion, chasing after Sanchez. Paco promises him that he'll take him down and free Huateca, but Sanchez calls him a puppet and calls Elle a fool who threw away his own future for his country. Annoyed, Paco tells him to shut up and promises to erase his body and soul. Using his god of firepower, he uses an exorcising flame slash to slash his soul, but it doesn't work. So Sanchez tells him that it's pointless because the body is nothing like his brother's anymore. Sanchez tells him he's going to need a nuclear bomb to take him down, and that annoys Paco further. Paco tells him that nothing can withstand the blades he and his brother wield, so he uses two techniques called the Infernal Overlord Fist and the Crimson Lotus Destruction Cross. It releases a great mass of heat and energy, but Sanchez appears unaffected, and he tells Paco that it's pointless and calls him brainless. However, the mechanics of Sanchez's robot arm suddenly start to malfunction, and he realizes that it's about to hit the fan. Meanwhile, at the presidential palace, Anna gets up feeling great pain. She wonders how she survived after she got hit by a laser, but soon realizes that the fragment of Marco's mask changed the trajectory of the hit, and she thinks about Marco again. Sometime later, she goes through the documents in the office, and when she realizes something that should be impossible, she rushes out. In the church, Sanchez's robot body starts to malfunction, and he wonders what Paco has done to him and to his immortal body. Paco asks him how many lives he sacrificed for something so pathetic, and he reminds him that he's forgotten that even Elle couldn't control the robot body. While Sanchez screams in pain, Paco rushes toward him and promises not to lose because he's got the will of everyone he's lost burning inside of him. While that's going on, Anna rushes to the church to tell Paco something about Sanchez, and she hopes she'll get there in time. In the church, Paco keeps slashing Sanchez's body because of how he killed everyone dear to him. He blasts Sanchez away with a ball of fire and promises to never forgive him. Eventually, he uses his badass ninjutsu called Flame Dance to cover the air in fire. Sanchez aims down at Paco using his bionic eyes and blasts him with a laser, causing the flame dance to erupt into an explosion. However, Paco jumps out of the explosion and slashes him across the neck. Sanchez kicks him backward, knocking Paco back, and he tells Paco that everything will be his, including the money, the lands, the power, the ninjas, and the nation. He blasts Paco with all he's got, causing a great explosion to destroy a portion of the church. After destroying the place, Sanchez is unable to read any reactions from his eyes, so he decides to leave, but Paco lands on his back and tells him that their sun will keep burning. He tells him they won't hand Hofueta over, and he uses his Flame Twin Dragon Strike to burn Sanchez to his core. Sanchez can't believe this is happening since he's immortal, and he wonders how he can lose since he's unbeatable. After that, Sanchez struggles to get back up, so Paco decides to end him. Paco tells him that they will declare independence from Yorknesia, but Anna reaches there and tells Paco to stop. Paco doesn't listen though, and he slices the robot's head and arms off. However, when he removes the mask, it turns out to be Faina inside the robot and not Sanchez. Confused, Paco hugs the decapitated head and can't believe what just happened. With great agony, he screams into the night, and Anna soon comes to tell him that Sanchez used the berserked L to transfer his soul into Faina. Anna mentions that L must have poured his entire strength into it because he believed that Paco would be able to defeat Sanchez, so he entrusted everything to him. Right at that moment, Paco sees the souls of L and Faina looking down on him. Aina adds that even after L lost his sense of self, he was trying to save Paco. Tears start to fall down Paco's eyes, but the robot body soon explodes and sets the whole church on fire. Sometime later, Sean and Roberta give a speech to the people. Nearby, a reporter explains that it's the inauguration speech of the new president. Moments later, Sean, who's the new president, declares that Huatika will withdraw from the Yorknesia Security Treaty and Status Agreement, and will pursue independence, which excites everyone. Sean says they've taken their first step towards a new dawn, but he reminds the people that they sacrificed too much to reach this point, so he reminds them that this was not achieved by them alone. In Faina's old house, Paco listens to the speech over the radio. He hears Sean say this is where the real fight begins, but they plan not to back down no matter how strong Yorknesia is. After the speech ends, Paco agrees with Sean that they'll keep fighting until they take Huateca back, and he puts his mask back on.